It's time for the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast.
On this edition of the Kirby on Sports Podcast, we will take a look at the NBA season as it just tipped off with special guest Carita Parks from Double Take Sports. All coming your way next on the Kirby on Sports Podcast.
Shout out Q. Shout out Q.
Oh, indeed. I'm glad you connected. This is Dave Johnson, voice of the Washington Wizards. You have connected to the right place because you are listening to my man, Josh Kirby, on Sports Podcast.
Coming to you from the Trumbull Insurance Agency virtual studio. Turn your stress and anxiety into peace and security with Trumbull Insurance. Contact Patrick Bankemper today at 540-532-0622 or drop him an email, patrick@trumbullagency.com. Thanks to the rest of our sponsors, Regroup Building Services, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation, Mark Francis with Icon Real Estate. And you are probably wondering why we are recording another episode this week, and it is to touch on the NBA season that just tipped off. We have a very special interview with a very special guest, Carita Parks of Double Take Sports. She is one of the hosts of the Triple W podcast, Wizards Insiders, Big Wizards Insiders podcast, and she does some PR work as well. So I'm really excited to bring you this interview with Carita Parks of Double Take Sports as we take a deep dive into the NBA season as it stands right now. Coming up next on the Kirby on Sports Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just tell you about Regroup Building Services. If you're looking to get your home remodeled, any part of your home, bathroom, kitchen, want to get a deck built, anything like that, Regroup Building Services can just about do everything. And take it from me, because they came in and they remodeled my family's kitchen, and they do a great job. So if you're looking for any sort of home remodeling needs, deck work done, anything of that nature, reach out to my guy Sean Hibbard over at Regroup Building Services today. You can check them out on their website, www.regroupbuildingservices.com, where they do the honeydews that your honey don't. Make sure you tell them Josh sent you. For sports fans living in condominium and homeowners associations, as well as business professionals, when you need a reserve study, PM Plus Reserves has been in business since 1990. Their studies are accurate and easy to understand. Check them out when your association needs a study. www.pmplusreserves.com. You can also contact them at 703-803-8436. Once again, www.pmplusreserves.com. All right, joining us now in the Trumbull Insurance Agency virtual studio is none other than the latest, the greatest, one of the best in the business, Carita Parks. She is the owner and founder of Double Take Sports. Carita, thank you so much for hopping on, giving us a little bit of your time here on this edition of the Kirby on Sports Podcast. How is everything?
Everything's good. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here. Talk some basketball, some Wizards. So thank you again.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get into basketball, obviously, I would like for you to touch on Double Take Sports. How did that become a thing? How did you know you wanted to get into sports?
So, wow, I've always known I wanted to get into sports since I was a young age. I don't know how many people know, but my background actually started in public relations, and I wanted to do sports PR. And through that channel, I actually met someone who had their own online blog, very similar to Double Take Sports. And I got linked up with them. And that's when I really started covering the NFL and Super Bowl and the NFL draft. And then I kind of transitioned into the local sports scene through a company called Sports Journey. And that's when I started covering the Wizards. And also I linked up with another company, 3 Point Conversion, where I covered the Washington football team. And then I finally said, you know what? I want to have my own sports media company, and I want to write about and cover the topics that are important to me, not just game analysis, but also some thoughtful pieces. And that is how Double Take Sports was born.
That is very great to hear. And shout out to Sports Journey, my guy Lake Lewis, one of the best, also covering the Washington football team.
Yeah, awesome guy. Shout out to Lake. That's my brother right there.
Absolutely. So I did remember that you had a PR background. So I would like to start with the 76ers in their god-awful situation with Ben Simmons. It's like every time you look, there's a new developing story about Ben Simmons, how he doesn't want to play, how he's getting dismissed from practice. I'd like to get your thoughts on that first and foremost from a general point, and then maybe a PR standpoint. What does something like that affect him and the team?
It's just a mess at this point. I mean, someone has to make a decision. And quite frankly, Ben Simmons, he's still under contract. I know he doesn't want to play for the 76ers, but all in all, that is your job, right? I can't just hold out from my job. You know, if I was at a PR agency, I just couldn't be like, I don't want to work here anymore, but you haven't fired me, so I'm just not going to show up to work. It just doesn't work like that. And so from my perspective, it is a mess from both sides. But Ben Simmons, at this point, 76ers, they haven't traded him. They haven't made any decisions. So he needs to show up for work. And it just seems like it's gotten so messy at this point where even if he showed up for work, the team dynamic would be completely off. So that's why I say someone has to make a decision. Ben Simmons either needs to come to work and be happy when he comes to work and just suck it up, or the 76ers need to make some moves. It's a deadlock, and it's just getting messier as the season. And it's a distraction. You asked me about the team. It's a huge distraction because no one's talking as much about their record or what they're doing on the court. It's like you said, every other day, every other week, it's Ben Simmons, Ben Simmons, Ben Simmons.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a mess, and hopefully they can get that resolved soon. Carita, just a general Eastern Conference question before we get into more your side of things with the Wizards, but what else have you been able to see throughout the NBA season so far? Who have you liked in the Eastern Conference so far in terms of performance? Who's looked good, who's looked bad, so on and so forth?
Well, you know, I obviously like what the Wizards are doing, and not just because I cover the team, and we'll get more into it like you said. But at the end of the day, no one expected them to be in the position that they are currently in. So they're a pleasant surprise. But I think that's kind of how the Eastern Conference is going. I mean, who expected the Bulls to be like number 2 in the Eastern Conference? So you got to like what you see from both of those teams. The Nets, they were clearly one of the favorites, and they're still looking pretty good. Despite all the issues the 76ers have, they are number 4 in the Eastern Conference. I would say a surprise is obviously the Bucks, because they're dealing with a lot of injuries. So they're really starting off shaky, and they're the defending champions. So it's not starting off too well, but it's such a long season that kind of stuff doesn't matter. If they get their guys back, they can quickly ascend back to climbing to the top of the Eastern Conference. And the Celtics look a little bit discombobulated to me. You know, they played the Wizards twice. They don't really seem to be on their game as much as you expect at this point in the season. So the Eastern Conference is pretty interesting, and you can't forget about the Heat. I mean, they're still doing their thing too.
Absolutely. So, I mean, the reason why I wanted to wait for the Wizards is because just their whole storyline, Carita, starting from the firing of Ernie Grunfeld, getting a new GM in, and not coming to terms with Scott Brooks. I mean, Scott Brooks, he was great to have in DC, but I think it was time for another direction at the head coach position in Washington. And I mean, none other than former Wizards great Wes Unseld Sr., his son comes in, and he is the next man in charge. And I'm just thinking, oh, you know, that's great. But I mean, the Wizards, are they really going to do much of anything? You see Russell Westbrook tearing it up last year, and you see that trade for John Wall to the Rockets, and obviously, and then you trade Russell Westbrook for a boatload from the Los Angeles Lakers. And it's like, oh man, how this team's looking pretty good. And then you look at it, and the Wizards are in first place in the Eastern Conference. And it's incredible, to say the least, because with all this team has been through, I just find it crazy that they're able to play such good basketball. But yet my only concern, and if you disagree with me, I'd like to hear your thoughts as well. It's still early in the season. Yes, fans and media are getting hyped because they went 2-0, their best start since who knows how long. But yet my concern for the Washington Wizards is the fact when they play some of the Western Conference teams, as in the then right now 10-1 Golden State Warriors, who are looking dominant, the Suns, who were just in the NBA Finals, the Bucks beat them. But I mean, this Wizards team, it's early, but I will say this, they are playing good fundamental basketball.
They're playing good fundamental basketball, but they're also showing a resilience that we did not see from the Wizards, at least for the past 2 or 3 seasons under Scott Brooks. If you remember, the Wizards in the last 2 minutes of a game, they would always slip and just let the game go at that point, and a team would sneak back in and just win it. You see them playing to the very end of the game, and I feel like this resilience that they have had to show early in the season is going to fare well for them when they do start playing some of the Western Conference teams. Now, the Golden State Warriors, like you said, they are looking dominant. They're 10-1. They have that championship swag right now. So they're going to be tough for anybody who plays them. But we're really going to see how good are the Wizards when they have to come up against some of these teams and as the season goes on. My only concern about the rest of the season is, can everyone stay healthy? If everyone cannot stay healthy, then we're going to start to see some issues and some problems later on. But I do think that Coach Wes Unseld Jr. has these guys locked in and has them playing at a very high level. And I think that they're going to continue to fight through, especially when you have those guys from the Lakers who know what it's like to be on a championship team. They're bringing that to the Wizards, and Bradley Beal finally has some help.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if you saw in that press conference. I forget who they were playing off the top of my head. No, excuse me, that post-game interview. Sorry, but Bradley Beal, I really like how he held himself accountable, saying he needs to play better basketball. That says a lot about him as a leader on this Wizards team.
Yeah, he is definitely taking responsibility and accountability for that. And I will say, even last season, when Brad doesn't play well, he will say, I did not play well. I played like crap. I got to do better. He's very hard on himself in that way. But just think about Bradley Beal hasn't been as dominant as we are used to in the start of the season. But we know Bradley Beal is going to pick it up eventually. So just imagine once he finally gets some comfort in his game, that's going to help the Wizards stay competitive as the season moves on as well.
No, absolutely. So I'd like to get your thoughts. I'm not sure. Are you at every home game, Carita, or are you only at a select few? How does that work?
Yeah, I'm at most of the home games. If I don't go to a home game, it's just because I'm out of town or something of that nature.
Yeah. So from what you've seen covering this team, I know Harrell and Kuzma are looking excellent, but are there any other players that have really caught your attention? Like this player is lighting it up and they're just looking incredible.
I don't know if anyone else is looking incredible and as dominant as we've seen Kuzma and Harrell be. Spencer Dinwiddie, though, he is impressive. Let me back up. He's impressive when he is playing well. He does step up to the plate. So I would say I would put him in the impressive bucket. But I do see a lot of promise. So, for example, Denny, he hasn't been lighting up the scoreboard, but he's been very efficient on defense. And you can see his game growing in that way. Daniel Gafford, he's a rim runner, and he's always impressive. He may not be the highest scorer on the team, but his ability to block and defend is just none other. It's very rare that you see what he can do in the NBA. And then let's just not forget about how Neto, he's more quiet, but when he comes into the game, he impacts the game. And, I'm just naming all these people, but we talked about this on the Triple W podcast. It feels like for once the Wizards have a team where so many people can contribute.
Absolutely. I mean, looking at this Wizards team, like there were so many things that could have not happened, and this team wouldn't be where it is right now. I mean, the John Wall trade, first and foremost, 100% the Wizards won that trade, because you look at Houston and John Wall now, it doesn't look like he's playing at all this season, which is very sad to see.
It really is. It is sad to see the way his career has gone since he left the Wizards, but it had already been in a tough place since he got that Achilles injury that had him out for 2 years. I mean, that's absolutely rare. So he had that. He went to Houston, which could have been a fresh start, but as you mentioned, it doesn't look like he's going to play at all this season. So it is sad to see where his career stands at the moment. But to your point, let's give credit to Tommy Shepard. He made some tough calls. When John Wall was traded, the Wizards fans were ready to light it up, okay? And then you bring in Russell Westbrook, and the fans were somewhat happy, still not over the John Wall trade. But when Russell Westbrook was traded, it wasn't the same. Everybody kind of understood. But now you see the purpose of Tommy Shepard's moves finally coming together. And you got to give him credit, because he really, like you said, won the trade, bringing in 3 solid talents. Now the Wizards are balanced with veterans and young players who can all make an impact. So, yeah, shout out to those moves that seemed very questionable at first, but are starting to pan out.
I questioned the Westbrook trade, but trading to a former NBA champion, a big contender with a lot of money, and you're getting a boatload back for Westbrook. I mean, that's your answer right there. One person can't make a team. It's a lot of different moving pieces, especially in the game of basketball.
Right. And then in that trade, we have to remember Aaron Holiday.
Oh, yes. That's right.
So they acquired him as well. So, I mean, Tommy Shepard turned that move into 4 players.
I'm telling you, incredible. But I'd like to get your thoughts, Carita. What's wrong with the Los Angeles Lakers right now?
I mean, I was never convinced. I don't like the idea sometimes of all these star players on one team. So I was never convinced that these moves would necessarily work, but they don't have LeBron James right now. They don't seem to really know how to bring Russell Westbrook into the fold. I mean, yes, he still has his good games. And then you have all these new pieces that are trying to build chemistry. I just think they're a little out of sorts. And you like I said, you have a lot of big names on the Lakers. Plus you have the injuries. So it doesn't look like it's going well so far, although there is a long season ahead. I just don't know. They're not showing that championship Laker team that we are used to seeing. Very poor execution, just not fast paced like we're used to seeing. It's just not going well for them right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a long season. Like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how the Wizards do, how some of these other teams do that haven't been so well in past seasons. But I mean, yeah, it's going to be a fun NBA season. We hope to get you back on midway or some point during the season to talk more NBA. But for the meantime, Carita, tell our listeners where they can find you and your work.
Well, you can find me on all social media platforms at Carita Parks. That's where I place all of my work that I do for myself, other entities, but also be sure to follow at Double Take Sports. That's at DBL Take Sports on all social media platforms. And don't forget to check out my podcast with 3 other ladies who also cover the Wizards. Triple W Podcast. That's at Triple W Pod on Twitter and Instagram.
Once again, Carita Parks, the owner and founder of Double Take Sports and the Triple W Pod. We appreciate the time, Carita.
Thank you so much for having me, Josh. Appreciate it.
Is it finally time to upgrade your home's interior? How about with an authentic farm table made locally from recycled barn wood? Shenandoah Primitives, based right here in Winchester, Virginia, makes farm tables, benches, tables, coffee tables, and a long list of other items for your home decorating needs. At Shenandoah Primitives, function and style are combined for great furniture that will last generations. If you're interested in combining the industrial look of metal with wood, or considering something incredibly unique with a live edge, Shenandoah Primitives turns those ideas into reality. Thinking about a mirror, wine rack, or other accent piece for your home, Shenandoah Primitives can assist with that as well. As a local small business, Shenandoah Primitives is happy to work with each client for a custom design or schedule an appointment to come out and view current inventory. Local, high-quality, handmade items can be found at Shenandoah Primitives. Find us on Facebook and Instagram or visit us at www.shenandoahprimitives.com. Once again, that's www.shenandoahprimitives.com.
Hey, sports fans. Thank you for listening to and supporting the Kirby on Sports podcast with founder and host Josh Kirby, along with lead contributor Dan Dembski. Like, subscribe, and give them a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcast from. My name is Dr. Dave Miles, founder of Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation. Our company helps leaders build engaged and productive teams. Exclusively for listeners of the Kirby on Sports podcast, you can take an opportunity to discover your primary communication style and learn more about effective communication with others. Text Kirby to 757-903-0743 for your free copy of the Working From Home Communication Assessment, where you'll learn your primary communication style, how to better communicate with others not like you, and tips on working remotely based on your personal communication style. 10 minutes, tons of resources. Learn about yourself and your team. Again, text Kirby to 757-903-0743 for your free assessment report today. I'm Dr. Dave Miles, founder of Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation, where we help you and your team be more engaged and productive by understanding each other better. Back to you, Josh.
Hey there, this is Mark Francis of Icon Real Estate. If you have any real estate needs in the Winchester surrounding area, including West Virginia, give me a call. I've got extensive experience, been in the business for almost 20 years, and would love to help you out. Track me down at Icon Real Estate, iconsells.com, or even give me a call, 540-247-1527. Again, Icon Sells, ICONSELLS.com, and I would love to chat with you and help you out. Give me a call.
Once again, a big thanks to Carita Parks, the owner and founder of Double Take Sports, part of the Triple W podcast as well. A lot of great insight. We greatly appreciate her time in coming on the Kirby on Sports podcast. Like I said, it's a long season ahead, but the Wizards are playing good ball right now. And Carita brought up a lot of good points, but I just want to emphasize it is still the beginning of the season, and there's a lot of basketball left to be played. So, I mean, I'm not fully bought in. I'm not one of those fans and people who are like, the Wizards are playing so good, they're going to the NBA Finals. They're going to win the whole thing. You got to take baby steps. This is a process, and we've seen how bad this Washington Wizards team has been in years past, but they're slowly starting to turn. They've been rebuilding, and with Wes Unseld and the amount of new additions they've gotten from the Westbrook trade, this team is looking pretty good. But once again, stay in the moment, and it is only the beginning of the season, and there is a long season ahead. But those are my final thoughts. Carita did a great job. We thank her once again for coming on. And that about wraps it up for another edition of the Kirby on Sports podcast. Once again, thank you to Patrick Bankemper in the Trumbull Insurance Agency, along with our sponsors, Regroup Building Services, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation, and Mark Francis with Icon Real Estate. Make sure you check out anything and everything, the Kirby on Sports podcast, www.kirbyonsports.com. Until the next time you hear us, always remember to create greatness. So long and peace out.